This is Speaking of Writers. I'm Steve Richards. The book is Let My People Go. The author is Eric Gokey. The book is a love letter to all, a letter to all who need to hear it. Love letter to those who have open hearts to enjoy it for what it could do for them. This letter has to do with matters of the heart, matters of life or death, matters of health or sickness, matters of compassion or lack thereof. The book is not just a book of words, but a letter made up of tough love through thought-provoking facts. Eric Gokey served proudly as military police, engineer, Apache, and OH-58 crew chief for the Joint Counter-Narcotics Task Force in Arizona. He graduated from a very distinguished culinary school, NGI, Natural Gourmet Institute, to become a nutritionally trained chef. He's done a few other things in between. He has 2 children and married, makes his home in Arizona. Happy to have Eric Gokey join me now here on Speaking of Writers. Eric, welcome to this program.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me on your wonderful show.
Thank you, Eric. So why this book for you?
It was a passion of the heart. There was a lot going on in our lives. We had to start speaking our mind, and putting it on a book was the best way to speak to everybody and get all the information that was boiling up inside us out there.
What's the main message you'd like the listening audience to know about this book?
This book is literally a mentorship type of book. It is a sit-down-and-read love letter. Less a book, more of a very long letter that I wrote lovingly to speak with the readers about the victims that they may not know about. And I lovingly, without any judgment, present this letter of concern about some things that are more important than what we are led to believe. To me, this book, and to others, I hope, is comforting, insightful. People will want to hear it. They will want to read it. There's a lot of missing pieces that make connections, that leave some things in life making sense. There's a lot of things in life don't make sense, so it makes those connections.
This is your very first book. Did you keep a journal when you were in the military and throughout your life?
Yes, I did. There would be thoughts, ideas, and emotions that would be inside, and I can't just tap the person next to me and say, hey, guess what? Compassion is great. No, I can't just do that. So I would write it, pull out my phone, put it in the notepad. I have pages and pages of notes. And the computer. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, 3 or 4 in the morning, and my wife was used to this, and I would just leave the room, set up the computer, and for 4 to 5 hours write all that was coming to me.
We're going to talk about compassion in a moment because that word comes up a lot. Let's dig into the book a little bit. Chapter 3 is called In His Image, and your wife wrote this chapter.
Yes, she wrote the chapter. She had a lot to speak about, too. This is called In His Image. It is about being godlike, even in the midst of abuse and oppression. It touches on living peacefully among all. It talks about the oppression, abuse, and pain that Katie, my wife, endured as a child, and how God, through His love, set her free. She writes about her wish for others to be set free as well. It is for both men and women, but it will definitely speak to those who have suffered at the hands of their oppressors and abusers, and hopefully help them overcome the pain that they've gone through so they can become the best versions of themselves as well. As she says in her closing of her chapter, after all, we are made in His image and after His likeness.
Eric, 4 people, including your wife, you just read a little bit from her chapter that she wrote, contributed to this book. Who is Pastor Frank Hoffman? He also contributed to this book.
Yes, I did an exclusive interview with him, and it was absolute delight. I have a special interview in there. He's a good friend of mine. He has a few documentaries out there where he spoke about God's love and peace and diet change and how it connects, and it was a fantastic back-and-forth interview.
What has he meant to you, Eric?
Somewhat of a mentor. I didn't have a mentor as I was growing up, and there have been a few mentors in my life, and I could say that he is one. I've been following some of his teachings and stuff. Fantastic, not shallow, short, or just transparent and loving, kind of like father-son.
The 4th contributor, Eric, is your illustrator.
Yes, Gaia. She has a website. She does illustrations, mostly cartoons and animation. She lives in Canada, and we contacted her. She is also Christian and very health conscious, and I sent her a little bit of the book. She said, okay, I'll do your illustrations, and she put a little bit of her story in there and her testimony.
Let's go to chapter 4. It's about honest compassion.
Yes, honest compassion. It goes over the real definition of compassion. It goes real deep. It's not just a word. It doesn't define it as society's definition of compassion, because every culture and tradition has different definitions of compassion. Some people's compassion may be just for their neighbor or their family members or their friends or for their pets and their dogs. But this compassion actually literally uses the dictionary and a true definition of the word compassion. It goes in depth. It's emotional. It should be a good chapter to read. Chapter 4, it definitely uses the word so people can actually use the word and know that, hey, am I a compassionate person? Do I live compassionately? And perhaps after reading the chapter 4, they'll get a good idea.
As we move to chapter 5, matters of the heart.
Yes, matters of the heart. This chapter speaks deep and to the heart of our decisions, all decisions, not just partial decisions or ones that we favor because we prefer to do whatever we want. And I don't think we should too much be like people that do whatever we want. Matters of heart hits that right in the heart, really, for all of us. All. When I say all, I don't mean just United States, North or South America, or just Africa or Canada. I mean all Havanians, all humans, all Homo sapiens. Matters of the heart. So it's a very poetic and emotional chapter.
Chapter 6 is the environment. Now, you live in a beautiful state in Arizona. You also lived in another beautiful state, Alaska.
Okay, so I think we've all seen the effects of the environment. Not while we're in the city, driving down the street. We don't see the effects too much. But when you head outside, you then start to see the effects. It's quite enormous. Part in the book, how about a little bit of humor? This book is about clowns. They take over the world, and once they gain power, they begin to destroy 65% of the natural world and 91% of the Amazon by any means necessary. Okay, that was false. There are no clowns in the book. But everything else is true. Does any of this matter, though? I think it matters to us. What we pass down, we can say legacy. Legacy doesn't always mean positive. Some people can hand down a poor legacy. So what legacy are we handing down? Just in the short past few hundred years, 91% of the Amazon is destroyed. We had a friend of ours say that they went and visited the Amazon. Of course, he stood in the center of it, and he said it went on forever and ever and ever. What are you talking about? The Amazon is not destroyed. Believe it or not, the majority of Brazil was covered in the recordable history with Amazon rainforest. Now it's just a little tiny bit. It's small. And 65% of the natural world, in Sir David Attenborough's time, he knew when 87% of the natural world existed, and more so. But 65% of the natural world is destroyed. What does that mean? Lack of biodiversity. Now, a little bit about what's important. Fresh water. In the environmental section, I go very deep in the science and the statistics and facts. Let's talk about carbon dioxide, then I'll talk about water. Carbon dioxide. If one person swaps meat for a delicious plant-based shopping list, they alone would reduce CO2 emissions by 1.5 tons per year. And if every American left chicken off their plate for only 1 week, it would save as much CO2 emissions as taking 500,000 automobiles off the road. 1 calorie worth of health-supported plant protein takes 11 times fewer fossil fuels than it takes to produce health-destructive plant or animal protein. And I go through a lot more statistics, but just one off the top of my head. Beef uses 2,500 gallons of water to produce only 1 pound of beef. But it's a have-to chapter. It's a revelation, realization, and an eye-opener. It's awakening. And at the end of the environment section, I have all the resources that I got it from, and it's necessary.
That's the environment, chapter 6. Chapter 18 is a very important subject, our health.
Yes, our health is important. It's important to our family members, loved ones, if we are here long enough to enjoy them. It'd be nice to see great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren grow up. Let me see. Have you ever lost a loved one from sickness or disease? Have you, Steve?
Yes.
Yes. Not old age, but sickness or disease, too early. So it is in these dark times that we begin to see. You cannot light your house on fire and then pray, God, please don't let my house burn down. God will probably say, really? Really? So this book explains enough thinking that we can just do whatever we want and not have consequences. I would like to add something to that might not be brought up, though, but at page 305, let me ask, wasn't Leonardo da Vinci significant? I would like to say he was significant. He was definitely very intelligent. Here's just two of his quotes that are very well hidden. You do find them, though. My body will not be a tomb for other creatures. What does that mean? Jesus also said, don't you know that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit? Now, Leonardo da Vinci also says, isn't our body a temple rather than a graveyard, dumping ground for diseases and dead bodies? It means to respect our body, treat it well. The logic is that the Holy Spirit lives in our bodies, and so does our well-being.
The author is Eric Gokey. The book is Let My People Go. His first book. It is available at writersrepublic.com and on Amazon, too. Eric, are you working on another book?
I am reading a little bit here and there, statistics and facts and everything, and adding them into my book, and a whole lot of love and heart. So I have two books in the makings. I'm not going to say the names of them yet, but it's in the staging together process. The other two books are in the stage process that I was at on this one 3 years ago.
And finally, what would you like readers to take away from Let My People Go?
Well, the name of the book and the front cover, there's a lot of meaning to it, completely divine. Nothing that I just said, hey, I'm going to write a book, Let My People Go. And it doesn't just go off of the biblical history of the phrase. Now, let my people go. Because so many people live oppressed with tears and pain and in poor health, suffering and crying out to God for help. And God is telling the devil, let my people go. It is time for people to be free, to know how to reverse the pain and disease that is causing them to live a life of slavery. I was a slave, too, to pain and medications. All of those pills never fixed the underlying conditions. Through my journey and the words in my book, I pray that God sets each and every one of you free, as he has set me free. Steve, I want you and your listeners to know that I was in a wheelchair. I was fainting. I had vasovagal syncope. I had so many conditions, neurological damage from injuries that I incurred in Iraq and Afghanistan. But God set me free. He told the devil, let him go. And God is telling the devil today, let my people go. On the cover of the book, you will see a tree half burned, half green. It has a double meaning. It represents not only the Garden of Eden and when God spoke to Moses through a burning bush, but it also represents God's abundance and how he, as God's children, and we as God's children, and the earth itself is decaying because of our lack of knowledge. Thus also our lack of decision-making and our lack of action.
The book is Let My People Go, his first book. The author is Eric Gokey, and more to come from Eric Gokey, too. You can get this book at writersrepublic.com and also available on Amazon as well. Eric, thank you so much for joining me.
Yes, it was definitely a joy. It always is. It's wonderful speaking with you.
Thank you, Eric. And this is Speaking of Writers. I'm Steve Richards.